Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Well, Wednesday, we did just get some news. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit behind here, but we did get the core PCE prices preliminary 2.1 versus 2%, GDP price index 1.6 versus 1.5, and wholesale inventories month over month negative spot 1 versus a spot 2. And that has led the Treasuries to moving down a few ticks. So tomorrow we get the big PCE number. It's a little different this time because of the end of the month being on a Friday essentially. But it's a Thursday, right? Because we're 29 days in February, huh? Yeah. So well, this year there's 29 days rather. Anyways, so there's a little bit of weird with the news, but I'm starting to get some indications that the market is concerned about that number being hot. Okay, that's interesting. So now, after selling a little bit, the Treasuries have turned around and have bought up quite a bit. And that seems to be a response to a pretty big drop in the dollar. So let me show you what's going on, because that makes this like way more interesting. Let's hear if I can find my chart. There it is. Okay. So here you can see ES it just continues to toy around with us. Just remember, the market doesn't know that my position, it really isn't at 08. I still have things from way back at like 111 even. Okay, so anyways, Treasury is kind of range bound. S&P 500 still kind of a little bit in like a downturn retracement sort of thing after these crazy highs. Oil is showing a little bit of pressure. There's still a lot of geopolitical risk out there, but I haven't heard anything explicit. And again, there's a lot of skepticism that they can get above 80. So this might be, you're probably going to see a lot of people trying to go short here in oil. But gold and silver were kind of pressured early on because the dollar was looking strong. And China not looking so good either. They continue to, just despite all of the market rescue efforts that the Chinese are putting in and everything, the Chinese market just continues to be dismal. And then here you can see the dollar. Well, so here you can see the yen really moving and the dollar coming on strong, but now turning back down. So that's what makes us move in the dollar. So really strong dollar overnight, but then because of, I don't know, maybe wholesale inventories is pushing them down really strong. But it's kind of weird how it was like the initial reaction was down and then all of a sudden, woo. So I'm wondering if there was something in one of these reports that's not in the headline number that kind of pushed them up. Or perhaps there is something else completely different. Reports were just a little mess, as Minik. By the way, good morning, Octavia, Say Paul, Meshan, Dom, and Amir. Lots of you guys here right from the beginning, but I'm a little bit late, so I apologize. Wow, Anthony Cordelli says, on this day a decade ago, I survived a heart attack at my trading desk. Wow. He was 36. Wait, so he's 46? He's not that much older than me. I'm getting old, man. I'm getting old. I believe this was just a little algos pulling liquidity and hence higher move. Yeah, well, it wasn't on volume, that's true. At least not in the 10-year. I mean, I saw a decent amount of volume in the 30 and the 5. So, but you're right that if the liquidity was completely there, which it's not. I mean, yesterday we were seeing 3,000s and now they're still at 2,000s. And we're probably still getting a little bit of the roll weirdness, right? But you're right. It probably wouldn't have gotten as far if the liquidity had been there. But that's always the case after news. Apparently Nassim Taleb's thing is bicycling. Let's hear. Brannigan Barrett, PCE data tomorrow is key for the next leg higher in risk markets. Expectations are for a month-over-month reading of Spot 3 versus Spot 2 in December. You've been following the trend. Spot 1 to Spot 2% is consistent with the 2% Fed inflation target. A number of Spot 2 or lower will only increase the odds of a soft landing. Yes, but again, I'm getting whispers. Like my news squawks and so forth, there are whispers that the PCE number is going to be bad. We'll see. I don't know. I haven't seen anything that's super reliable yet. Yeah, Bitcoin at 60K is pretty wild, right? You know, when I was going through, I didn't even pull Bitcoin up. I don't know why. To go from 50K. Wait, where is that chart? To go from 50K basically to 60K. So a 20% incline in 2 days is wild. But they are pumping it, man. I'm telling you. This is what happened. This is what happened. Is over here, they're like, okay, we got the ETFs. Here's the time to pump it so that everybody FOMOs in. But then they're like, oh, wait. No, we can't do that. Because there's all of these guys that did that arbitrage trade in grayscale or whatever it's called. And so we got to wait for them to sell. So they sold. And then it was like, okay, it's done. Turn on the money printers. And then all of this money from MicroStrategy and from the Tron network and Tether started coming into the market, pushing it up. And now they are in like cray-cray mode. And you see that, I mean, this move right here was, you know, we were going, oh, okay, Bitcoin's moving. That's pretty good. That is crazy. That is crazy. Going to be a lot of hurting mufugas. Do you think that there's a lot of shorts getting stopped out? I don't know. Maybe. Perhaps. I forget. The all-time high is about right here, isn't it? Or maybe we're past an all-time high now? I'm not entirely sure. 2017 was 20K, right? When I think when it tops out, it's going to be ugly. Okay, so if Bitcoin topped out and they started selling it, I don't know. But why would it sell? You know, it just kind of goes back to like when I see things starting to get crazy, that's usually just the start of it, you know? And then if we have a sell, the floor on that sell might just be back at 40, 50K again. Right? So the thing that I still see is like that the money that this thing is being propped up with is like super dangerous. And if that evaporated, Bitcoin would be worth like practically nothing. But what is going to force that to happen? I don't see that. You know what I mean? Strong downtick. Do you see right there at 09, there's 4Ks on both the bid and, you know, the market orders both buy and sell at that price. So it's just like anything else. It's like, okay, so the market does not reflect all available information. So we can identify situations where there are things that we know that are not being properly factored in. Like, I don't think that Bitcoin is properly factoring in that the money is coming from questionable sources, that there is probably a decent amount of fraud involved in here, and there's strong risk from regulatory authorities. But what is going to force the market to realize that data and price it in? And I'm not seeing it. When I start reading stories about people selling and refinancing their homes to buy Bitcoin, I know it's over. But then the other thing is, like, I'm more interested in like it completely collapses and we don't hear about Bitcoin again for like 10 years or something like that, kind of like what happened after the Mt. Gox crash. That's what I'm more interested in. I'm more interested in this. This looks like another crash created by fake money that doesn't exist. And, Mt. Gox was the thing that kind of, oh, it's all fake. And so they sold it all, and that was the end of it. And I thought that would be the end of it, except for that somebody decided to come and bring it back, and the regulators have been behind the curve. It should have happened by now, right? Like, we identified this in 2017. There was court cases. There was, like, the New York Attorney General went after it, and, like, nothing really happened from it. So what is going to bring things back to reality in Bitcoin? I'm starting to worry that it will never happen. It'll never happen until, like, it starts to pose a real threat to the government, and then maybe they'll do something, right? So the halvening should be soon in Bitcoin, but I think there's been problems, and like their estimate for when the halvening will occur has been pushed back. What the heck is this Nassim Taleb is saying? Israel doesn't have 50 years, of course. I'm not sure if it has 15. Once the senior generation goes, it is rather likely to enjoy the same unconditional support it does currently. Israeli public opinion and decision makers appear to be completely oblivious of this fact. Okay. And then Nassim Taleb says in 1967, Israel invaded West Bank, Gaza, and the entire Sinai Peninsula in 7 days. Today is still stuck in Gaza after 145 days with no R advance HE the tunnels. 50 years, China will be the dominant superpower, and the U.S. wokes will call the shots. Think dynamically. I disagree with this assessment here that Israel is not thinking about that. I think that's exactly what they're thinking about, and that's why they're saying we need to solve this today and just end it for good. People focus too much on the price of Bitcoin and not the mechanics of buying and selling it. Okay. I don't see anything wrong with that statement. I just don't understand what you're trying to say. Feel the same about many of the people playing with Bitcoin? I don't know. It's just like one of the things that frustrates me with Bitcoin is that I feel that they have completely departed from what the original mission of Bitcoin was, and have turned it purely into a speculation asset at this point. And the problem is, I think, is that they're still delusional to think that Bitcoin will take over. I mean, listen, the governments are not going to allow Bitcoin to take over, right? As soon as it starts to become a problem, they'll take care of it. Like when it starts to make new all-time highs, will there be enough buyers to deal with all of the excited sellers who may or not be millionaires at that point? Well, yeah, you know, the thing is that I think is kind of funny is like, if you are interested in investing in Bitcoin and you were not already in it when it became clear that there was going to be Bitcoin ETFs, what the heck are you doing? Right? So, yeah, there's probably is new money coming into the market. They're probably dumb money. But I would hope that if you're making that play, that you're already long from 50K. Like, look, I pointed out countless times. I can't sit down and like take the victory lap for it per se, because I didn't invest in it. I said, no, I want nothing to do with it, but I think it's going to go up. I think that the ETFs bring money in and they can still pump it. I think that probably Bitcoin, that we haven't seen the highs for the year in Bitcoin, I think is what I said, right? So now we're up 20%. You should already be in it. So now that all of these people, these crazy people are FOMOing in and everything, that now it's kind of the question of like, where do you take your profits and don't be too greedy, but you know what I mean? But I think that I'm going to bet you, how can I word this? I want to word things in a way that we can like look back and remember what I said and say that it was a pretty accurate prediction. You know what I mean? I don't think that we've seen the high for the year, not even close. I think that we could probably see, it wouldn't surprise me to see 100,000 this year. No joke. That would be a 5x from the ETFs, but or no. If we were at 50K, that would be doubling. But I can absolutely see it. Because the thing is I really don't think that the money, this volume that's coming up, is not from people going, oh crap, it is going up now I need to buy it, blah blah. That it's not that. It's coming from people printing money in Tether and Tron. It's coming from the Tron blockchain in particular, or at least that's what I'm hearing from people on Twitter that really watch that, right? And on top of that, like if I come to Google Trends, man, it's not hot today, but I'm already sweating like crazy. I hate that I just sweat so much in the morning. Okay, so that is interest over time the past day, but we want to see like 2004 to the present, okay? So when you look at Google Trends, right? Here's 2017 when it was like super cray-cray, and it's never recaptured the interest. Isn't that weird though? Isn't that interesting? So then we had this rise in 2020 that was kind of a part of that, I like what I would call the everything bubble, or the start of the everything bubble. Although a lot of people were talking about an everything bubble way back here. Anyways, and look at the interest since then. We just had ETFs come out. Like that was like all they talked about on CNBC. Nobody cares. So like the public interest, you know, maybe something changes, but for now, it seems that for some reason the public interest in Bitcoin is just not there. It's just not there. And yet it's buying up like crazy. So one could argue, oh, well, how much further can it go if all of those people become interested again? That's for sure true, but I kind of suspect that they won't. I kind of suspect that they got burned in 2017 and that they're all like, nah, I'm not going to mess with this anymore. You know what I mean? Okay, Sergio says, how do you see the S&P 500? Sure. So what I see right now is a market that is very much in one of the strongest bull markets that I've ever seen, and I've seen some pretty crazy bull markets, and is in a slight pullback right now. I think that at some point this year, we should probably come back and test some of these moving averages down. Well, the first one is at 4,900, but then we could, I think that we could probably see as low as 4,700, 4,600, right? Before probably then it bounces back up. So I don't know if we've seen the highs of the year for the S&P 500, but we do have, what do we know that can predict it? Because that's just the state. All I've explained to you is the state of the current market. That doesn't necessarily tell you where it's going to go next, does it? In order to know where it's going to go next, we need to look at things that may potentially tell us what the flows going into the market are going to be. And I would say that the market looks pretty optimistic that because it's an election year and everything, that things will be mostly positive. But there is some risks out there. And those risks are kind of more in our market, or in the treasuries. So the first one is that there is a concern that inflation is coming back. Because there hasn't been a landing. This whole thing that like people are saying the soft landing is even more possible now, I disagree. The current market trajectory is no landing. The current market trajectory is no landing, that we raised interest rates and defeated inflation without suffering any kind of negative impacts whatsoever. And the Fed just leaves interest rates where they are, and the market continues to be happy with everything and just keeps pushing up because of AI. And like, look, AI is possibly the greatest productivity change ever. Ever, guys. Ever. So do not. I'm telling you, man, I feel very strongly about this. Do not underestimate the AI trade. Everybody thinks that this is like, oh yeah, this is a bubble. It's going to come back. Nvidia shouldn't be worth this much, etc., etc. That might be true, but if it does come down, I would buy as much of it as you could. If this like turns out to be a bubble and it collapses, I would get in as much as you can. I do feel. Ooh, we need to start the music again. We finished the list. Where is it? I do feel that the market is kind of like exaggerating what the AI can do right now, but it's developing very, very quickly. So I would not underestimate it. It could just keep going. And you could absolutely have a situation where everything else is dismal because interest rates are high and the economy is messed up and this, that, and the other. And AI continues to keep the market going all on its own. This whole thing that like, yes, we have very, very bad breadth, that it's only AI that's going up right now. It's true. It's a problem. And historically that's a problem. But there's also like a very good reason why that could just lift the market all on its own, Initial hatred and rejection of new technology is why only handfuls of people get into every little industry bubble of growth, and perhaps, and such there's a few trusted, perhaps we do that. Larry Fink laughing all the way to the bank with his big, probably. I mean, the guys that did the ETFs are probably smiling right now. And Michael Saylor, for sure, because there was a time there before the ETFs came in where, as far as I could tell, the Saylor was the only thing keeping it going. And I'm really shocked that he's allowed to do what he's doing and that it didn't catch up with him. But with the prices that he's bought at and everything, and now we're well above that, because his average position is like at 30K. So you're going to quickly get to a point where Sailor is up double on his trade. Because that's like one of the things that would kill it, right? Is if Bitcoin fell enough that MicroStrategy was forced to sell, then it would be ugly because they would not be able to sell all that. Is there more to go? I don't know. That's kind of one I got to be careful about saying, because somebody's going to buy it and then say, you were wrong, Seth. But I think that if I was a betting man, I probably would buy more. I do want to spend more. I want to spend a little bit more every month on stocks. I want to make some sort of a move every month in stocks. But I don't think that you're ever going to get me in Bitcoin. I don't think it's right. I don't want to participate in it. And I don't want to turn the channel because I could probably become, well, I don't know. YouTube has kind of been anti-Bitcoin too, right? There was a time where there was lots of Bitcoin influencers and people were getting big on YouTube from it. And then YouTube changed things and made it very difficult for you to get anywhere with Bitcoin on YouTube. Maybe that's part of why the interest doesn't come, because it does seem to me that like YouTube is the zeitgeist, right? Like if it's popular on YouTube, then that's what drags people in. Like if all of a sudden YouTube decided that futures trading was a big thing and lots of people started searching for it, and it was like, I would probably be, our channel would just be taken off and going like crazy, right? That's the way that the YouTube works. But anyways, with AI, I think that what tends to happen is when an innovation like this comes about, you get a lot of people that recognize the opportunity and get in on it and don't really have very good business models, aren't applying it really very well. And, overall, there's just like problems with the market that establishes itself after that. And so there's usually a big crash first. Just like with the internet, right? There was the 2001 huge internet stocks boom, whatnot. And then there was the big crash after 9/11. And then eventually we kind of all built back. And most of those companies went kaput and Amazon survived somehow, right? That's how it went. So I'm sure that at some point you will probably see something similar with Bitcoin, with artificial intelligence, that people are going to go, oh, hey, you know what? Like ChatGPT ain't all that, because it doesn't actually understand what it's saying. It's just really good at mimicking human speech and putting together things that other people have said before, but it doesn't come up with its own ideas. It doesn't know what your company policies are. I saw this story the other day where there was a guy and he needed to fly because there was a death in his family. So he asked, I don't have it right now, the information right now, but I will later. So can you reimburse me for the bereavement later? And the AI chatbot said, oh yeah, totally, that's fine. But it says it all professionally and everything like that, right? Well, the robot was just hallucinating a policy. There was no such policy like that, and the robot didn't really understand what their policy was anyways. So he went and did it and then didn't get reimbursed for it. And so he sued the airline. And, the airline tried to make all of these arguments about why it wasn't legitimate, but you know what? That guy won. So there is going to be, with this one, because really it's the AI chatbots in particular is the big one, right? AI chatbots in particular is the big thing kind of driving all of this, was ChatGPT. companies are going to have these growing pains where they kind of realize that, well, I can't just replace all of my customer service representatives with ChatGPT because it doesn't actually understand what it's saying. From like, it seems to understand language and it seems to understand some things, but it doesn't necessarily smart enough to know this is what our policy is and I can say this and I can't say that. So that's why you kind of have to have a human control on it. So it is a huge productivity benefit. Tell you what, Treasuries, once they started pushing the lows, that was a quick 3 ticks lower. Feeling really good about this now. So there's going to be growing pains with it for sure. I think that we could probably at some point say that we're in a bubble and have it come back, but I wouldn't underestimate it. Because the thing that's different about this, like the internet had productivity increases across the board because it gave everybody the ability to distribute information to everybody. That's what made the internet valuable, right? Artificial intelligence has the ability to just make everything more productive. Like there is like nary a thing in the economy that couldn't potentially be improved by more available artificial intelligence in the long run, as we learn to use these tools and we get more effective tools. Just maybe not right now, right? AI reminds me of the recent Gemini disaster. I can't imagine if the same was reversed, Google would be canceled yesterday by the woke mob. Oh, yeah. You're saying that if Google's Gemini came out and was pushing far-right propaganda on it, that people would be so upset that Google would basically be canceled? But you know what, Minik? I think that it's already is almost as bad of a disaster as it can possibly be. It doesn't matter why it was screwed up. What happened there? Because like, honestly, how does this happen? I want to know what they used as their training set. Okay. Because the fact that it like refused to draw white people, that means that there was not any white people in their training set is basically my take on it. Where did they get that data set? I really want to know what they were training it on, because that's really wild to me. And the whole thing is that it, collecting the data is like one of the most critical parts of this LLM thing. And that takes a long, long time. That's why I have a mixed emotions about the Reddit IPO, because Reddit is probably the best source of training data out there. All these people saying stuff, when you go and you search for stuff, how many of you, when you're searching for a recommendation about something, you put Reddit at the end of your query? Because I do it almost every day. Because I know that Reddit is the one place where I'm going to go where I'm going to find like actual genuine people saying stuff about brands and their experiences with it, right? There is a lot of manufactured content on Reddit too, but it's the best out there, okay? So, I hate Reddit as a company. I kind of wonder if they're IPOing in a way that would be very, like it's a very good IPO. Because I've got the email to be able to participate in the initial offering. I think that right now I'm leaning towards doing it, but I don't know if the price that they're going to give is good. It wouldn't surprise me to lose money on the IPO, but the data is so valuable that in the long run, I think that Reddit could be a very valuable company, But it's because that getting really good training data is super hard, and you have to have people go and get the data sets and convert it into the right formats and get it all into something that can actually be used. And then you're spending massive amounts of computing power to train the AI on the data set. Okay, so this was not like this trivial thing. Google coming in and saying, oh, well, like we kind of made a mistake and we're fixing it now. No, guys, this is like years and years of work. And you can see how this ideology has permeated almost every corner of Google and like the California Silicon Valley industry in general. And it is absolutely devastating to Google, because why is Google valuable? Google is valuable as a source of information. I can go and I can search and it just shows me what's available out there on the internet, everything out there on the internet. Now that it's so obvious to everybody that Google cares more about its political priorities than it does giving you accurate information, why would you use Google? I don't care what they do with Gemini. There is no way I'm using it. Like if I'm coming in and there's a service, if we get to the future right now, I have access to GPT-4 through my work. They're paying for it for everybody in the office to have access to GPT-4 to help do their work. They believe in it that it will make everybody productive, and I think generally it has. Although sometimes I've run into a couple of situations where we trusted the robot too much and then very quickly found out that it was wrong, right? But if there's the point where like the competition is between ChatGPT 7 and Google Gemini 3 or whatever, I'm going to go with the ChatGPT one every time, or whatever competitors come along, because I do not trust Gemini now at this point. I know, and because I know it wasn't just a mistake. I know that it was the ideological bias of the company, right? So I think, not that I'm saying like if you have Google stock, sell it or go short Google or anything like that, but I think that Google has suffered irreparable damage from this debacle. I don't think people realize how big of a deal this is. That you've got possibly the greatest productivity increase of all time, possibly the greatest business opportunity of all time, Google being one of the top competitors, and then they just did something that shows to everybody that they cannot be trusted to provide this service to you effectively. It's a big deal. And there are people starting to write about it. But like I haven't seen a whole lot from the business community. But like for me, like I will say is, I'm thinking about putting more money into individual stocks, like on a monthly basis. I'm not going to be buying Google. I might not sell Google, but I'm not going to buy it. I think that if I was going to buy one of those big techs, I'd be more interested in Microsoft. I did not see that Veritasium had a video on Black-Scholes. That's interesting. I wonder what he would say about it. It's a very solid video. The $1 trillion equation. Yeah. Oh wow, yeah, it was today. Well, 22 hours ago. I should have seen it yesterday. You know what, YouTube? Your recommendation engine is shit, because this video was not recommended to me. I watch Veritasium all the time. I'm really in on market stuff. It should have recognized that that's a video I'd be interested in. That's strike 2 for you, YouTube. or Google. Google. Is a whole Twitter? Wait, what are you talking about? I haven't seen anything about it on Twitter, but Black-Scholes is such an interesting case study, I guess you could say, because it furthered our understanding of markets so much. It was really a revolution in finance and a very, very pivotal change in the financial industry. And yet, it's wrong. As far as I can tell, if you try and use Black-Scholes as like the basis of your pricing for options, you're gonna lose your shirt. And in fact, Nassim Taleb in some of his books shows much simpler calculations that do a better job. So it's really quite kind of funny. But it was just because they were able to like model something that people already kind of suspected, that I think it was such a big deal. And so it's still useful even though I wouldn't use it in my trading. I think that that's really, really interesting. I got one thing wrong when you get to the part of the buyers versus seller depiction. Okay, well, I'll watch it later. I didn't have a whole lot of them. I tell you what, man. I remember it used to be that every day I would really have a period of downtime and I would try and make a TikTok. And it was like at a time when like the kids weren't there, so I could have quiet to like record a TikTok. Now it seems like that never happens. The toddlers are always screaming, but more so than that, I just don't have the time where I'm like sitting down. Like if I get a break, I'll come in and like do my news reading for like 30 minutes, and then it's like off to the next thing at work. I've been really busy, so. So I haven't had as much time to watch things on YouTube, like a Veritasium video, but I'd definitely be watching it. I really like his content. So what do you guys think of this Treasuries here breaking? So there was definitely like a stop run, like when they broke, let's say, I want to say like when they broke 06 or so, 06 half. Yeah, right there. You can kind of see, you see right here at 06, this like little dip in the profile. Right? That was kind of like, so after that, there was a stop run. So I would say liquidity hold at 05, holding here pretty well. But it's very curious because I don't know why they bought up, and it's wild to me how quickly they fell back down. Yesterday, when we were seeing this kind of bearish movement, I said, well, there's an auction today. The auctions haven't been going very well. They're probably selling because of the auctions, right? Today, my understanding is we don't have any of those. Yeah, I don't see anything on the calendar today. No auctions. There is a lot of Fed speak scheduled for later. Where is it? That's starting more at like noon Eastern time. But I'm starting to wonder if this bearishness... but then the other thing was when we had the auction yesterday, it was like sell, sell, sell all the way into the auction. And then the auction was actually a stop through. So it was actually good. They jumped pretty strongly on the auction results and then baited back down over the evening. So I kind of suspect that this bearish action that we've seen is maybe actually more hedging against concerns that PCE will be bad. And seeing the way that it reacted to all of that data, and then in the end was kind of like, well, I don't know what was going on there, but we don't care, we're selling it. Although the flows are not selling. In the 5-year, they are actually like highs of the day in cumulative delta. In the 10-year, I would say the same. And I'm only seeing selling in ZB. So what's actually going on here is a really strong bear steepener is coming through. That was kind of what happened the last 2 days. Bear steepeners are like... I don't remember my bull steepeners, bear all of the 4 different types and what people traditionally think that means of markets. But if my memory serves me correctly, the bear steepener is one of the less common ones. NQ and ES are showing a first sign of deviation on my system. No, when I look at my ES charts, I do perhaps see something going on with the spread in ES and NQ. But overall, I would say that there's just not a lot of trend in ES right now. So my take is that the market seems to be waiting for that PCE. I think that PCE is a more important data point than I realized. So this is another thing that's going on that I find curious that we can talk about, because I know you guys love to talk about this. The headline from Zero Hedge, and this is at the top, is NATO's debate over direct military intervention in Ukraine shows its desperation. So Macron was basically saying, like, oh, we're not ruling out military intervention. Like, we have no intention, we don't have any plans, like, we're not going to get militarily involved. I don't think that the opinion right now is most people want to go in and intervene in Ukraine, but we're not ruling it out. Like, everything should be on the table, right? What do you think that that's about? Is it they're just trying to, say to Russia, like, we're fully dedicated to this, and EU partners will get militarily involved if we're really forced to? That's kind of what it feels like to me. It also seems to me like that these countries that are, on the eastern border there, that are concerned about being invaded by Russia, are super, super concerned, and they kind of feel like it's an existential crisis for them. One of the things that has kind of perplexed me, and I would even say concerned me, is like, okay, they want the United States to give more military assistance to Ukraine. Why does it have to be us? Why isn't the EU putting up more? Well, I think I understand a little bit more about why now. For one, the EU already is providing as much assistance as they are capable of giving, as far as I can see. Like, France and Germany are not spending 2% of their budget on NATO like they should be. Okay, so that's a problem. But that's like a big political problem. And they're getting to the point now, too, where any more money spent on this starts to cause political problems at home. But then the other issue is that what they can do is a drop in the bucket compared to what the United States can do, especially since the United States can basically say, okay, here's all of our military equipment, you use that, and then we're going to buy more new military equipment for ourselves. That's basically the way that it's working. So the amount of like actual ammunition and supplies and everything that can be provided if the US gets involved is substantially more, right? So we went through this thing where it's like, we got to get the US, we need to get more from the US, we need to get more from the US, and then the political situation is just like going nowhere because Joe Biden doesn't want to make any compromise on the border. So now Europe is kind of like, oh, I don't know if we're going to get the Americans anytime soon. And maybe that's why they're starting to talk about it. Because I think that there's some genuine concern that there will be a Russian offensive this spring and that they will go a lot further and it'll be a big problem. So now I think that Europe is like, okay, we need to start doing something. Oh, once it's time to retire the Magnificent Seven moniker. According to Google, the Magnificent Seven are Microsoft up +8%, Google down 2%, Amazon up 15%, Apple down 6%, Meta up 36%, Nvidia up 60%, and Tesla down 20%. So it's really the Magnificent Four, with 3 of the alleged members down on the year and underperforming the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. Yeah, well, it doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me that it's Google, Apple, and Tesla either, because I don't like it, those 3 companies. I don't really like Meta either, though. I'm kind of shocked that Meta jumped as much as it did this year. But whatever. Microsoft and Amazon, I think, are good plays. I like, especially because those are the 2 best offerings for data centers. I don't think that Google's offering is as good as either Amazon. Having used all 3 now at this point, I don't think that Google's is as good as Amazon and Microsoft. And I actually kind of like Microsoft's the best. Amazon's okay, but I feel like Amazon's is a little bit simpler. There's more things to explore around and mess around with in Azure than there is in AWS. Kind of looking around at the different markets here. While we've been kind of sitting in this hole in the treasuries, it seems like gold has kind of been coming off of its highs. So gold is not tracking the treasuries as cleanly as they normally would. Yeah, Apple giving up on the electric car. What do you think is with that? Like, when there had been rumors that Apple was making a car for a long time, and then when we confirmed that it was actually happening, I was like, why would Apple make a car? I don't know if that really makes sense. And so for them to now be giving up on it and it being like a drag on their stock is really curious to me. Manik Shadev, I recently found out you and I were hammering some guy on futures trading and criticizing the lad's risk management. Realized that it was you and I conversing, and I didn't know you back. Oh, really? That's funny. Wait, who were we criticizing? Somebody commented on it. You're gonna have to. I don't know how you can. You could send me the link on Discord. If you put the link here on YouTube, it won't show me. But you'd have to show me which conversation that was. So I get into this argument with people on Reddit quite a bit, but every once in a while, you'll run into somebody that is just like so crazy about it. Because I think that really what happens, and because I don't know that specific situation, I can't say that that's what it was. But what I find tends to happen is that narcissists get very, very drawn to trading, right? Because you got a person that has suffered some sort of wound to their sense of self, essentially, and the market kind of becomes the best way for them to like prove themselves, to say, these people were wrong, whatever the deal is. So if they're having success in trading, and then you tell them, well, what you're doing is kind of stupid, and eventually you're going to blow the account, and all of the success that you've had so far is kind of a fluke, they hate that. They lash out so hard because you are. It's like, you know, they have a wound and they've stitched it up, and it's like you're ripping those stitches out, man. Yep. Some guy asking for advice saying I was up for 3 to 4 months and then lost it in 4 days. I don't remember that. What was he saying? That he was like, are you saying that he lost it in 4 days happened recently or something? Or was that what had spawned the initial thread? I don't know. It's hard because risk taking on risk affects your results. So you basically, you have to count for the risk. Did he try the moon cycle strategy? Yeah, I've told you guys this story several times, but when I still worked for the bank, there's a small brokerage on Main Street in Salt Lake. And so one day I decided to go into the brokerage and see if I could, if there was a trader there that I could talk to. And so I met this Japanese guy. He lived in Japan, in his up until his early 20s. And he was involved in the whole 80s market that completely crashed, right? And he made a ton of money during that time and then lost it. And he had basically come to the conclusion that he wasn't good at the stock picking or whatever it was, and so he's just executes for other people, essentially, was kind of like his take on it. But he showed me his best trade that he had ever made, and it was on this stock, and he had to chart it all by hand. So he had this piece of paper that, like, if I unfolded it, it would be like the whole length of this room. And he showed me where he entered in on the stock, and it was the start of a moon cycle. Like, the moon cycle was a part of his entry, and that was the greatest trade he ever made. Why he doesn't believe in it anymore. You can have a lot of success for a long time, and it's just random. I don't think that people because day trading is hard. Day trading is definitely hard. So I think a lot of people think like, oh, if I even come out and make money one day, I must be doing something right. But it's not actually the case, because if you just take on a lot of risk and it's a market that's favorable to that kind of a risk-taking strategy, then you'll do well. And you can do well with that for a long time before it blows up in your face. If there was a way to do that and then always know when it was going to blow up in your face and get out and not be involved, then it would be great. But I don't think it works that way. I usually trade according with my sign. Oh, okay. But yes, I post on Reddit quite a bit. I post on Reddit quite a bit. I have to hold myself back from commenting on Reddit too much, because people want to get in these ridiculous arguments with me. Like, I mentioned this one yesterday, but since you weren't here, somebody was complaining that the market was really hard to trade, and I pointed out that volatility was really low. That can make a lot of retail trading strategies very difficult to make money with. Generally, you do better when volatility is elevated but not super high. And somebody said, no, that's wrong, because gamma is positive, so that means that people are buying volatility, not selling volatility. And I was just like, well, I could probably try and take the nice tack and be like, okay, what is it that you think we're saying, or that you're basing this off of, that makes you think that that's a reasonable thing to say? Because it's like absolutely a ridiculous assertion, in my opinion. First of all, the gamma does not necessarily tell you what the VIX is right now, right? There's always going to be whether they're long or short gamma, and you can have long gamma and actually long gamma is kind of what you would expect when the VIX is very low, right? But when volatility is low, what that means is the market's not expecting as much movement. So it means that it's harder for you to make money from buying calls and the price going your way, right? The stock is more likely to stay within the bounds that the options market makers are pricing. So that's why you sell volatility, and you make more money from selling volatility. Of course, could also mean that options are cheap. Yes. So if you buy options and then volatility increases, that's when the best money-making opportunities are. But overall, I think what you're going to find is that the professionals are selling volatility, either by selling options or by just outright coming in and going short the VIX. Yeah, you know, so like I could have written all of that, but I'm like, nah, this guy just seems so too stupid. So I didn't try and engage with them. I'm sure that there's probably something that they were thinking that would make what they're saying make sense, but what they said was just like, that's so wrong. I don't think I can even talk with you. And I get that on Reddit a lot. It's like, it's so weird that it's like things that I know a lot about, and then people try and argue with you about them. It's like, what the F is wrong with people? Like, this is like my whole being. Like, I work and I think about trading. That's like my life, right? And that's been my life since 2008. And then some kid, you know, that learned about options this year is going to come in and tell me that I'm wrong about something. Is just a little bit like, not saying that it's like insulting to me. It's just, I just don't understand how people on the internet can say things and feel so confident about it, you know? Because I'm always, you notice even here with me saying this, I'm like, well, there's got to be some way in which what he's thinking that like what he says makes sense, right? Like I'm hedging, but what he said seems stupid to me. I don't trust myself like that. I would never, especially if I knew that they really had expertise in that area. I would, immediately be like, well, I must be wrong. So I don't trust myself like that. Are they? Okay. I am detecting a slight hint of like an upside bias here now, but they're just not really going anywhere still with the treasuries. And it's been over 30 minutes now too. It dropped at the top of the hour. So you know what I find really curious is how much it felt like that they've been messing around. Like, I took this position at 09 yesterday because that just happened to be where it was and where I like rolled. So it's really weird to me to see it be like the point of control or close to the point of control for that area, and that it started out there. It really starts to make me feel paranoid, like that the market's trying to mess with me, you know? Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so have you read this story? Wendy's announces Uber-like surge pricing model. That sounds so insane to me. I don't think am I crazy? What do you guys think about this? I don't think I'm gonna go and buy stuff at Wendy's if the price can change depending on how many people are in the restaurant at that time or something. That like if I go during dinner time, that it's going to be more expensive. F that. It needs to be the same price all the time, or I'm not interested. I'm not interested in surge pricing for fast food. That's just sounds so ridiculous. And I don't think that the people, and you know what else? Dave Thomas would never allow that. Dave Thomas would never allow that. Am I wrong? Surge pricing, but not surge wages. Dude, that would be it. That would be interesting. I mean, it is something that I think about often. That, of course, markets are not efficient, but it seems to me that the labor market prices are particularly inefficient. I don't think that everybody really gets paid what a fair market value should be. Most people probably don't. And there's lots of things where it's like, so you know what's one that that just boggles my mind is childcare. So there's some of these people, they're out there and they're like, oh, this company is only offering $150,000 a year salary, but like I already have to spend $70,000 a year for childcare and things like that, right? Like, I don't understand why anybody thought that like they would be able to outsource all of their parenting during the day to a third party and not have to pay that third party the equivalent of a median wage, right? Like $40,000 to $50,000 a year per kid. Yeah. How else was that gonna work? Here in Utah, childcare is actually the cheapest in the nation. There's too many stay-at-home moms. So there's plenty of people out there running daycare, and so you don't really have any trouble finding good cheap daycare. But everywhere else where, everybody wants to be working during the day, okay, who's going to stay and watch the kids? You're going to have to pay them. There's not enough of them, you're going to have to pay through the nose for it. Why did you not ever consider that would happen? I don't understand. And these people that, like, whenever I get on that side of TikTok, I go and I read the comments, they're just, they think it's so unfair and all this, that, and the other. Like, well, yeah, but if it costs you $150, if it costs you like $60,000, $70,000 a year to have your childcare for your two kids, right? That means that the person that's watching them is making $60,000, $70,000 a year, and you say that that's not enough. So what about them? You're allowed to have a comfortable living, but not the people that are taking care of your children? What? How does that make sense in anybody's mind? But that's like what they say. They're making that per kid, potentially. So when I say 60, 70 per kid, I don't think that it's actually that high. I'm thinking about this. I think that I saw this one place where I went and I did the math, and if you were running childcare in some of these high demand areas, like these like Boston, for instance, right? Like a place where a lot of hoity-toity liberals tend to congregate. So it's a big city, but it's kind of urbanized. It's a big city. That you would be making six figures at least. But I think that per kid, it's more like 20,000 per kid or something like that. And there's a limit on how many kids you can watch it's like 4 to 6. Well, I wasn't saying, generally speaking, I don't like liberals, but I wasn't saying that to try and disparage liberals. I was just trying to give a description of an area where this is happening that would make sense to you, right? It's in the areas that are very liberal and a lot of college educated people. So these college educated people, they go and they have children, but they don't want to stop working, so they have to get daycare. And there's not very many people in those areas that are like stay-at-home moms, so there aren't as many daycare options. Because in Utah, there are a lot of people that, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have, most of my kids are at school, but I still have one toddler, so I can run daycare and have, 4 toddlers or however many you can have. And there's a lot of that. In every neighborhood, there's one of those. Wait, what do I do? Like for a living? Like what's my day job? For childcare, my wife stays home and watches them. She still works, but she mostly works on the weekend because she's a flight attendant, so she can make her schedule very, very flexible. Before we had kids, she would just do dailies where, you know, she would take the kids to school and then she would fly and then she would be back before they got out. So that's how we do it. Yeah. But like that's kind of the thing is like, okay, if I had to pay for daycare for my 2 kids, right? It would be about equal to what my wife makes if she was really working hard and like working full time. Yeah. Cuz it's like a person's yearly wage. Or I think you can have 4 to 6 kids. So it's like half of a person's yearly wage, and she kind of only works part-time. So yeah, like $30,000 a year. Yeah. It's crazy to me that anybody would think that it would be cheaper than that. Okay, I do not like the liberal attitude of the day that is kind of like, I went to college and so I know better than everybody else about everything else, even though I'm not directly involved in that thing. That's what I think drives me crazy. People want to be involved and have a say on issues that they know nothing about and have absolutely no involvement in. Like, you know, these environmental nut jobs coming in and saying you shouldn't be allowed to use nitrogen-based fertilizer anymore, and trying to like shut down all of the farms in Europe and that sort of a thing. Well, you're not a farmer. You didn't go to school for farming science. There are degrees in that sort of stuff. There's a lot to know about farming. I spent a lot of time when I was a missionary in rural areas where everybody was a farmer. And I learned enough from them to know that I was completely out of my depth when it came to like what's involved in running a farm. It's not a simple thing. Everybody thinks this is a simple thing. There's a lot involved and there's a lot to know. And then people want to come in and tell them how they're supposed to farm. It's stupid. Like, how can you be so dumb to think that, you know, here's a person that's an expert and that's their whole life, and then you're going to tell them what to do? But that's what liberals are doing these days. And that's what I hate. That's what I hate about it. And then they have the audacity to come in and think that they're above all of these other people because they made more money or they got a stronger education. Doesn't mean anything. There are plenty of people that are highly educated and are completely stupid. You should always, anytime that you start to think something like, well, I'm better than this person because, and look, I do that because it's like, hey, I know about this particular thing. I think that what you're saying is stupid and you don't know what you're talking about. I have to listen to you. Sure. Or at the very least, I'm not going to comment with you on Reddit, right? But I got to be very, very careful when I'm saying those sorts of things and like thinking about that to be like, I'm better than that person. As soon as you start to do that and you create that enmity, that's a problem. And that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing in society overall. And that's what I'm seeing from the liberal side of the aisle, right? I don't think that all liberals are like that, but the liberals that you are most likely to come across online are. Yes. I don't know what the deal is with that, but like the liberals that you come across on Reddit and that want to comment with you are crazy, man. Or some of them are just crazy. But I mean, it also comes down to, I mean, you can see how they vote and how they come down on certain issues and things like that. Yeah, people on Reddit are crazy in general. The other thing that bothers me is that they will say things simply to appear virtuous, but then vote for policies that are that do the exact opposite. Like they say, I want to help poor people. I want to uplift the working class. You know, like there's all these people that are kind of like almost communist in their political beliefs. Like there are these people on Reddit that, you know, like late stage capitalism and yada yada yada, right? They're 100% pro communism and they think that they're going to be pro workers, but then they 100% support open border policies that depress the wages of working class people. Why is that? Because they're making their decisions based on what they think makes them appear the most virtuous, what it elevates their social prestige, and not actually what's going to be best for those people. They don't actually care about those people at all. It's a pawn. I kind of feel like the best thing that I can do for working class people is get out of their way. I don't know their businesses. I don't know how they do their jobs. I don't know what's going to be the most beneficial for them. I go and I do on weekends we do a lot of woodworking lately, and I tell you what, my uncle knows way too much about woodworking because it's like, okay, we're going to cut a board with the table saw. Okay, I've done that. I'm not going to say countless times in my life, but dozens of times in my life. So I feel fairly confident cutting something with the table saw, right? But then he goes down through all of the mechanics involved in the table saw, all of the particular things that he does to ensure that the board stays up against the fence so that you get a straight cut, so that you can push the wood through at a consistent speed so that it doesn't burnish the wood, and so that you don't cut your fingers off. And it was like all of these minute details about this particular thing that I was like, well, it matters. If you want to be really good at it, then all of these things matter. But when you're sitting listening to them, it's kind of like, wow, there's a little bit ridiculous how detailed you can get about just cutting a piece of wood on a table saw, right? And almost every working class job has that degree of nuance in it. Especially like the working class jobs that like somebody does it for a living, that does it full time and does that for their whole life. Yeah, there's tons to know. And everybody treats them like, they must be yokels and they must be stupid because they didn't go to college and become computer scientists. I think it's just such a stupid take that people have. Well, did you vote with Trump? Well, I definitely am not going to vote for Joe Biden. I do wish we had a different presidential candidate this time around than Donald Trump. Not that I irrationally hate him or anything. I just kind of feel like if we had picked somebody else, it would be like a slam dunk case and Joe Biden wouldn't stand a chance. But maybe it'll work out. I tell you, the one thing I've noticed this time around, so Ron DeSantis, he had his presidential campaign came along, right? And people basically eviscerated his campaign. They said that it was just like a dismal campaign. Well, he had a lot of pretty smart up-and-comers in his campaign, but they just completely blew it. And a part of it was that they did not have the experience. So why was that? Well, because Donald Trump basically sucked up all of the experience, all of the campaigning experience in the country. Like all of the movers and shakers in the running a campaign world were all involved with Trump basically before he announced. And there was no talent for anybody else left, right? So I think that there is hope on my part that this time around Donald Trump will have a better experience in the White House to get some things done, because before, I think his biggest problem was that he did not have enough people to, put in any of these positions. Wanted to increase the number of levels of depth I was looking at. I do see a big order at 26.5 and big order at 14.5. Interesting. Why don't you like Biden? Well, because I dislike his policies. Like this thing that's going on with the border. It's really weird to me. Well, all these people are like, oh man, the border really is a big problem. How did it come to this? I can't believe that this happened, etc. No, it's like Biden did exactly what he said he was going to do, and this was the result. And we told you that's what was going to happen. It was obvious. Biden, one of the things that a lot of conservatives like about Trump is that Trump did what he said he was going to do when he was in office, or at least he tried. I would say that that's pretty generally true with Joe Biden as well. He implemented for the things that he could really implement, with his executive actions and so forth. He said that he was, going to hit the oil industry. He did. He said that he was going to have an open borders policy, basically, and he did. These are all really bad. He said that he was going to do more economic stimulus, even though all of the economists were saying it was too much and it would result in inflation. But he did it anyways. You're saying that you're having problems with Rhythmic? I am not having any problems yet. That's really weird. Two people saying that it's messed up, but I haven't had any problems yet. Well, maybe it's just a matter of time. Maybe it's only a matter of time before my Rhythmic starts getting messed up too. Seeing oil is moving up, by the way. So yeah, I don't like Biden because of his policy. I don't really think that he is healthy enough for the job. I guess this is the other thing, okay? Like, people say that Joe Biden is old and senile, right? And he's making all of these flubs and his mental acuity isn't there and everything. Okay, well, it's definitely the case that as he has gotten older, he is not as sharp, okay? But he was never sharp to begin with, guys. Okay, this is the guy that he ran for president like 4 times, and every time he resigned in disgrace. Like there was some major gaffe or campaign scandal. I think that the one during the year that he was running against Obama, like when Obama beat him, that it was like a plagiarism scandal or something like that, right? Like it was always, Joe Biden was always kind of prone to saying stupid stuff, making things up and all of that. So he was never the sharpest tool in the shed. It was when he won the primary. I tell you what, Joe Biden winning the Democratic primary was probably the greatest indictment on the health of the U.S. political system that you could possibly ever get. That here you have a situation, perfect opportunity to go up against Donald Trump here where you can show the strong contenders, political leaders that you have, and then the best that you actually get is Joe Biden, because everybody else ended up doing so poorly that they basically just had to go with the politician that had been around the longest. That Joe Biden winning that contest is still like so shocking to me. So shocking to me. I used Edon with Sierra, but my extra prop trade account with Rhythmic is not working properly. But those ones are run on a different data server. They're both old. Well, Donald Trump is old, but I would say that Donald Trump is in much better health than Joe Biden. I would bet good money that Donald Trump lives to an older age than Joe Biden does. Or if not to a greater age, because I mean he is fat, so that is a big hit against his health. I think that when Joe Biden gets older, that he will have dementia, and I think that Trump probably will get dementia in his old age too, but I think that Joe Biden will go way before Trump does. JB is the last remaining civilian war vet. Is the 10-year Treasury at 110.04 half? Really sounds to me like it's an issue with their demo server, not that their main Chicago server is not having any trouble. And signs of dementia in Donald Trump? No, I don't think so. So one of the things that's happening is the public, by and large, has come to the conclusion, let's say, that Joe Biden is not mentally spry enough to be a good president. And the Democrats know this, so now they're trying to make this argument that Donald Trump has the same problem, right? This is the oldest trick in the book, right? You accuse your opponent of what you yourself are guilty of, right? So if you yourself are senile, you should accuse your opponent of being senile too, to blunt that advantage. It's so transparent too, man. So like the one that I thought was so funny was on Reddit everywhere, and I mean it was all over Reddit. Holy crap! I saw so many stories about this where he called his wife Mercedes, was what the headline was. Donald Trump calls his wife Mercedes. No, he didn't. He was talking at CPAC, and he was thanking Mercedes, the woman who basically organizes CPAC. That's who he was talking about. But the whole liberal media went with it, trying to use this as evidence that Donald Trump was senile. It's crazy. It's crazy. But Donald Trump is a crazy guy. Right? Like, Donald Trump, I think, has some sort of actually, I think that he's ADHD is what I think it is. I think that Donald Trump is ADHD, and part of his ADHD is that he will just make stuff up on the spot. Like, a lot of ADHD people are prone to doing that, right? Especially the kind that's like a little bit more narcissistic. I'm not going to say that he has a narcissistic personality disorder, but he's definitely more narcissistic than the average person, right? So like a narcissistic ADHD person will like just make stuff up. I think that he's probably ADHD. Interesting. Block buy into 110.05 half. And then they tick down. Oh. Now does that selling follow it down? Sometimes you get a tick down and then they try and hit into 05 and they can't clear 05 either. Nope, they did. They cleared it and they stuck a pretty big bid there at 05 as well. So we may just continue to be stuck here in this range for a while. So anyways, I don't think that the flubs that they're picking up on Donald Trump are like a result of his senility. I think that he's always been like that. And it's a different kind of character from Joe Biden, right? I would not say that it's what you want in the president either, but no, not Joe. I'm saying Donald Trump is ADHD. I think that you're right. I think that Joe Biden is like, I'm not an expert in that area, but Joe Biden seems to me to be like the old people that I knew that I saw get dementia. Donald Trump seems like somebody that's severely ADHD to me. Like the way that he talks, he just says whatever it is that comes into his head. He talks about something, he's talking about something, and then he'll go off on this tangent over here and this tangent. I'm telling you, he's ADHD. That's why, have you ever seen this whole thing about where he's talking about like having debates and not, like being drug tested for the debates and things like that? It's because for most of the debates, the early debates, he was probably taking Adderall. I guarantee it. You can see a difference between how he behaves when he's off the Adderall and when he's on the Adderall. There's probably a big internal debate about he doesn't want to take the Adderall anymore, and they're like, you should continue doing that. I bet you. When I was a kid, and you'd go to like the 80, well, not a kid, but younger, when I was in my 20s, okay? And you'd go to the ADHD clinic that I go to get my medication. And one of the things is like, hey, even though you're ADHD, you can be successful. And then they would have a list of people that were known, confirmed to be ADHD that were rich and successful. And Donald Trump was always the first person on that list. And then he became president, and you can't find anything online about him being ADHD. But I am convinced that he is ADHD. Okay, what about Trump's policies? Did you like? So I think there was a number of things that Donald Trump did do well. So here, I tell you, the thing that I liked the most was that there were many, many opportunities where Donald Trump had the opportunity to make some sort of an executive order kind of stretch, play, whatever have you. One instance was like when there was like literally rioting out front of the White House and they burned the church and all of that sort of thing. Another instance was during COVID. And every time that there was like an opportunity where everybody was concerned that, Donald Trump would abuse his power, he didn't. And overall, I would say that Donald Trump used the power of the executive less than other presidents, and I liked that. I always thought it was funny that everybody accuses Donald Trump that he's going to become a dictator and everything, but with the way that he wielded his presidential powers when he was in office, he was the least abusive of that. Like, Obama definitely abused that. I would say that Bush abused that quite a bit too, right? But Donald Trump was better than both of them in that respect, okay? Another big thing that Donald Trump did was he got that tax reform passed. I don't think people realize how big of a deal that was politically. I don't know if the impact of it is really that far-reaching. Like, for instance, there was a lot of tax breaks and things like that in it that were temporary. It had sunset clauses in it with the intention that then it would become a political issue and the Democrats would kind of be forced into extending them, right? And then it was an advantage to Republicans. But, so I think that some people diminish that accomplishment because of that. But what they don't realize is that the Republicans had been working on that tax reform package their entire careers. Like Orrin Hatch, and I know this because I've spoken with him before and because he's my representative. His whole career was trying to fix the corporate tax code in particular. And the reason why he stayed in office for so long was because he wanted to get that tax bill passed. And so when Donald Trump came in, he worked with Orrin Hatch and they got that thing passed first thing. That was probably the biggest policy win for the Republicans in like 30 years. Everybody forgets about it. But that tax bill that he passed was a big deal. It was a very big deal. Now, he certainly made mistakes. I think like the whole thing about like their initial response to children in cages and all of that, they made big mistakes there. But their immigration policy by the end was really good. They fixed the problem. The stay in Mexico policy basically fixed the problem, and people weren't coming across anymore. They fixed the problem, and then Joe Biden came in and did executive orders on his first day of office and broke it again. But so they screwed it up at the beginning, but in the end, his immigration policy worked, and it was a good policy, I think. That's another big one. What else happened? Now, with the COVID-19 pandemic, this one is kind of weird because that issue isn't really so much about policy, is it? I think that, for the most part, a lot of people felt that he didn't take the virus seriously enough and that he lost the election in part because of that. Like, all he had to do was speak to the fear that people were having about the pandemic continuing. And he didn't. He wanted to, get the economy going because he thought, oh, well, we have to recover the economy or I'm not going to win the election. And that's what he cared about, right? But the whole thing is that it was supposed to be like, shut the economy down for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And then everything was supposed to open back up again. And then all of these crazy people came along and were like, oh no, we have to keep things shut down forever until the pandemic is completely, COVID has been defeated. No, it's not gonna be defeated, guys. You're all gonna catch it. You're all gonna catch it at some point in your lives because this is like gonna be the common cold. That's the way that those sorts of things tend to go. And so he was correct in the end to open the economy back up when he did. Do you think that the tax cuts benefited working class people or the rich? Okay, so the tax cuts that he implemented benefit primarily upper middle class people. The tax policy almost always benefits the upper middle class section of the population. Because that's like, well, let's include middle class and upper middle class, but not upper class, okay? Which, for many people, you would consider the rich, yes. But like, that's the biggest voting block. So the tax policies always benefit those people. I'm pretty well-to-do. It benefited me a lot because they gave you bigger child tax credits. So I keep getting tax returns back, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it so that I don't get a tax return, and I just get more of it into my paycheck, and it keeps not working. I keep getting a tax return. And then there was the money that they gave you, right? Where they gave you a check, and then they started giving you a check every month if you had kids. And I have 5 kids now at this point. 3 stepkids and two together. So I was getting like a ton of money a month from the government. I don't know if that one was that one that happened during Trump's time. I think it did. I didn't like that. I didn't like that policy though. I kept getting that. I put it all into the stock market, but not the stock market, but I saved it for the kids' education. But I kept being like, stop sending me money. You know? It's funny. See, so I know what you're talking about here, Trader Lord Vader, because there's Destiny was having an argument with somebody, and he made this argument that like, okay, when you talk to these people that love Trump though, like what was it about his policy that they liked? They can't say anything. Oh, well, he did the tax reform, but then like what else did he do, etc., 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 right? Well, so for starters, one, probably all of the people that Destiny is talking to are stupid and don't know anything about politics. Okay, you have to get into a certain class of Republican before you get Republicans that really look at policy and understand policy, right? There's not very many of them. But then the other side of this, though, is that we exist in this political environment where you can't do anything, right? You can't pass anything. So there's not a whole lot of legislative accomplishments that you can talk about for Donald Trump. basically the only real strong legislative accomplishment that they came up with, I think, was the tax reform. They passed the tax reform, and that was the only major bill that got passed during Donald Trump's time. So there was plenty of other things that he did. I mean, a lot of being president is not just the policy, right? Like, honestly, the policy is more about, like, Congress, right? But that's where I think that Destiny kind of screws up there, is that he will look at Obama and he will say, Obama did this executive order, this executive order, this executive order, this executive order. The reason we liked Trump was because he didn't abuse his presidential power like that. That President Trump had few presidential orders and few like real policies that could truly call his own, other than the big tax reform that was like the first thing that they got passed while they still had the votes, and then it went back to you can't do anything in Congress. That's a good thing. Yes, no new executive actions is a good thing. Yes. I think that the president, that George Bush was the one that started it, by the way, okay? I think that George Bush abused his executive powers. The Supreme Court let him get away with it, and they have implemented countless policies at a regulatory level that should be passed by Congress. And Donald Trump exercising restraint in situations where it would have been very much to his advantage to do executive orders was a big plus for him. That's the thing that the conservatives like about him. Is there any policy from Biden that you like? Well, so first of all, I don't think we've passed any bills since Biden has been president, have we? And do you support a national abortion? No, I don't. I don't. Dude, this thing where it was like, okay, they reversed Roe v. Wade. I think that was the correct decision. I think that Roe v. Wade invented a constitutional right that did not exist. It's not in the Constitution, and ergo, it should be left to the states. So they go and they correct that bad decision. And then the first thing that the Republicans do is come in and are like, okay, so now let's make it a national policy. Let's make a national law about it. No, you freaking idiots. We just fought for 30 years to make it a states' rights issue, and now you're changing it. Just shut up. Go away. You're the stupid part of the Republican Party. Go away. I can't stand that there's people pushing that. I think that abortions, that you should only be allowed to have an abortion in the first, like, let's say 12 weeks. A lot of people say that 8 weeks is too soon, so I'm going to say 12. No access to reproductive health care. I do not believe that the government should have any role in making certain healthcare more or less available to people. I think that the bill has generally been a bad thing for society, but I don't think that the government should be involved. Forcing prayer into school classes. Was there a thing? I don't remember there being anything about that in the last 8 years. I remember there being stuff about that when I was a kid, but you know how it worked when I was a kid? Was when I was a kid, it was like, if people wanted to be religious, then that was okay if everybody was a willing participant, and that you couldn't force anybody to participate, but that you could still do that sort of stuff. And then they turned into, no, you can't have any kind of churchy stuff in school whatsoever. I think that there was a thing where, like, if the students did it, it was like this, the student party president wanted to have a prayer meeting or something like that, then you could do it. But otherwise, so I think that issue has been exaggerated by the left. Well, but okay, so Trump said at his speech that they forced prayer out of public schools. but they did. That's what happened, right? When it was during the Bush years, I think it was during the Bush years, there was a case and a change that basically made it so that you can't pray in public schools anymore. Before, you could pray in public school, but you couldn't force other people to participate. And they changed it to you just, like teachers can't be involved in any of that stuff whatsoever. I don't agree with that issue. Like, I don't understand why teachers are allowed to have like rainbows in their classroom and be like explicitly pushing LGBT ideology on students, but then you can't do the same if you're religious. What's with that? I feel that teachers do have individual opinions, and that there is a place for them to be able to express their opinions to their students and let their students learn from them. And I just don't understand why it's one-sided. It's probably a bad policy from me, because teachers tend to be liberal these days, right? So really, if you think about it, if Republicans were true conservatives, then they would be probably the most interested in being teachers, because they would be interested in perpetuating the understandings and things that we've learned in our society and making sure that our kids understand them. But instead, Republicans have basically decided we don't ever want to be teachers, and they let the left teach. Because they're not actually conservatives, they're just anti-government. Now, the infrastructure bill, I don't remember the infrastructure bill. That sounds familiar, but I don't remember the details on that one. So, I'm not going to say that I'm against LGBT. I think that a lot of kids are like being brainwashed into it, right? Like, there's this huge cultural push for it. Whereas my opinion is like, I don't care. Do what you want. Go do it over there. You know? What about the Don't you think that is just fear? Well, so no. So on the transgender issue in particular, I don't think y'all understand, man. Because listen, I have kids in school. Okay, I've had kids in my house that claimed to be transgender or thought that they were transgender. Not that they had surgeries or anything like that, but that they had, that they were like identifying as girls identifying as boys. And I don't think that their parents knew. I mean, I don't know. At what point is it my obligation to tell their parent? But I kind of assumed like their parents can't be that dumb. They must know, right? And I don't want to rock the boat. It is a real issue. People kind of have this idea that like, okay, it's only like 1% of the population, so why are you getting so upset about them and this and that? I tell you why. Because it's an issue that's affecting every kid in school today. Okay, even if it's like this X% of it, like basically that's enough that every kid knows somebody like that. And they're implementing all of these policies for it. So that there's these situations where like the kid is identifying as transgender and the parents don't know about it. It is happening, and it's way like you are way underestimating the impact of like 1 to 5%. Okay, and the number of young girls identifying as male has skyrocketed. It's crazy. And I think that there's substantial evidence to suggest that it is a cultural phenomenon and not just like we're identifying them more. So it is not fear mongering, especially when we're implementing policies relative to it, right? Everybody acts like the Republicans just kind of found this minority group that they can pick on, and then they use that to rally their base. And no, that is not what happened, man. The reason conservatives care about that issue is because they've been compelled to care. The left were the ones that were pushing it first. The left were the ones that created it into a big deal. Everything on the conservative side is almost all politics from conservatives in America are reactionary. The left made it a big deal, not conservatives. Okay? Conservatives were not the one that came in and said, let's ruin every woman's sport by letting men participate. Conservatives didn't do that. They're just reacting to that having happened. And it's getting to the point now where, like, every major sport, the top person is actually a man and not a woman. It's getting crazy. Conservatives didn't do that. And it is a real issue at school. I've seen it. Okay? I guarantee you, if you have kids, you ask them, they know a transgender kid. Guarantee you. 1% is a larger number than you think. Okay, so the Dunbar's number, Dunbar's number is basically like based on the size of your brain, the number of active relationships that you can really keep track of is limited, and it tends to be somewhere around like 200 people. Okay, so if you know 200 people, that means 2 of them are transgender. If it's 1%, and it's actually among Gen Z, because so many people like there's this studies that like 30% of Gen Z kids are identifying as LGBT. Yeah, your kids are encountering it. It's a real issue. We should do a podcast, maybe. I do very much often see when, like Destiny, there was a time when TikTok would show me Destiny a lot, which I don't like him. But, there's so many times I was like, well, yeah, but you're basing all of that on people that don't know, well, there's definitely been times where I'm like, I wish I could talk about that, that I was in that kind of position of prominence so that I was the person going and talking. But probably I don't need to be, because, like Ben Shapiro, he's smart. I don't agree with him on everything, but he's more conservative than me, but I don't feel like we got the best voices over on the conservative side. Because again, I don't think that people are actually conservative. I think that they're just anti-government. Man, my nose really itches for some reason. So you want teens to not get gender affirming. I do not believe that teens should be given hormones or surgeries. No. I think that giving teens hormones or surgeries for gender affirming care is child abuse. And it does not, the idea that they will be less depressed because of it is not supported by the evidence. The studies that people were pointing to that they were using to justify this were extremely flawed. Most of these were surveys where they went to LGBT forums, and that's where they got their data sample from. So, of course, the people and the way that they respond is going to be biased. And another thing is that they say, like, nobody ever, like, these detransitioners, that they don't exist. Well, the reason why they say that is because they go to the gender clinic and they say, okay, here's all of the people that you've done. And then, like, the people that you've still got in 5 years, did they want to detransition? Well, the people that wanted to detransition stop going to the clinic so they don't get pulled the second time. Right? In Europe, in the past year, there has been several like national health organizations and things like that that have come and admitted that the gender affirming care is not backed by scientific evidence. That's correct. It's not backed. The number of actual children getting hormonal treatment is slim. Well, so again, I think that you are underestimating the impact of small percentages, right? So as a percentage of the population, it's very, very small, yes. But you're still talking about hundreds of thousands of kids. Have you read these stories by the people? I wish I could remember the name, but there was one in particular that they worked at a gender clinic since the beginning, essentially. And they talked about what was going on there. You know, that like a kid would come in and say, I think maybe I'm a boy, and be on hormones by the end of the day, sort of thing. And they talked about how easy it was to actually get on hormone treatments and things like that. So while the numbers of the overall population are still slim, it's a lot of kids. And what is scary about it has been the explosion in it, right? It's all of the sudden, all of these girls saying that they're transgender boys. The suddenness of it. Obesity before puberty most commonly leads to a huge rush of the growth hormone during puberty, which is why some kids get so darn big when they get older. Not everyone, of course. Oh, I've never heard that before. That's interesting. We should leave those things to the professionals. So there are professionals out there saying that this is crazy, right? It's so like there's this whole thing in Canada where like they're gonna strip Jordan Peterson of his license, right? So it's like we should leave these things to the professionals. Oh, but by the way, anybody that's a professional that doesn't agree with us, we're gonna kick them out so they're not a professional anymore. Okay. But I'm just saying there were a lot of professionals that were pushing an idea that was not scientifically sound. And it took a bit of pushback, but now in the EU, they have come to the right conclusion that it is not backed by evidence yet. They could continue doing research, I suppose. But it's not empirically backed that like you are less likely to kill yourself if you get a gender transition. If someone sees themselves as too fat and decides to become bulimic in order to get their ideal weight, would you support encouraging someone to vomit up their food so that they cannot be depressed? Okay, so this was something that I saw the other day that I thought was interesting, and I'm not saying that what I'm about to say is evidence-backed or anything like that, but I am starting to see a good deal of evidence that suggests that the obesity epidemic is primarily because of insulin resistance. I'm not saying that that's proven, but you know that's the thing that I'm interested in, and more evidence in that case. And that's part of why these like Ozempic and these miracle drugs, that's part of why they help so much, is because they get your blood sugar back to manageable levels and make your insulin sensitivity go up so that your body actually burns the fat off and you go back to the weight that you should be, right? So I saw this one guy claiming that, you know, like if you have that problem, the easiest way to solve it is to fast every other day. You do like an easy fast, so like I guess you can have snacks and stuff, but basically every other day you fast, and so the day that you don't eat anything, then your insulin sensitivity reverts back to normal. Thought that was really interesting theory, I guess. The Food and Drug Association needs to be reformed. See, like here's the thing. I'm not going to say that I trust experts. I don't think that that's the correct thing. I trust empirical evidence, and I think that the decisions for things should be left up to the people that are most affected by it. All right. Now, that's kind of an interesting thing when it comes down to children, right? Because children do dumb stuff, guys. Children do dumb stuff. So the parents should be involved there, right? It is improper for us to come in on like a political level or even as like the medical industry and say the recommended treatment for people with the gender issues is to transition. And then if the parents disagree with it, throw them in, take the kids away from them. I was going to say throw them in jail, but it's not been that extreme. But there has been in places where like the kids are just taken out. Did you hear this story where there was a girl and she believed that she was a boy. So she started getting gender affirming care from the school. And when the parents found out, they took the girl away from their custody. Like the girl was taken from their home and was given to the teacher that was supporting her in her gender affirming care. And during that time, while she was with this teacher, she ran away and got sex trafficked. So she got basically kidnapped and was turned into like some sort of a prostitute for a month. And then the police finally found her. When the police finally found her, they put her into like a foster home kind of situation, sort of a thing. Not a foster home, but where the kids that don't have foster homes are at. Not the orphanage either. I don't remember what you call it. But anyways, because she identified as a boy, she was put in the boys' home. And then she got raped and abused there as well. So the parents are suing the state and the school. Yeah, it was a halfway house. That's right. It was a halfway house. She went to the boys' halfway house and then she got raped there too. Crazy story. And so now the parents are suing because they're saying if the child was kept in our care where she should have stayed, none of that would have happened. There shouldn't be a middle ground as it pertains to affirming obvious mental illness? Yeah, I don't know, man. There's this so the line here is not as hard as I don't take as hard of a line as I think Uzi does, right? Because I definitely would take the position that I don't think it's good for any child. I don't think that any child should be on hormones or be getting gender changing surgeries. The majority of kids, they grow out of it and they'll be much happier. I understand that they want to stop the transition so that it's easier to like make a full transition and they'll be more of a boy or a girl when they're older. But the evidence that I've seen suggests that it's not very good for you and there's lots of problems with it. And I just don't believe that you should be making that big of a life-changing decision when you're a teenager, because teenagers are not very good decision makers. Okay, you gotta understand that teenagers are like wired to be stupid, right? That the whole thing is they're wired to like not listen to their parents, to want to leave home, so that they'll go and spread their genetics to other villages, essentially, right? So there's reasons why teenagers are like this, and I don't think that you should be making life-changing decisions like that in that state. Okay, but what role does if that is like what is the smart thing to do? Okay, what role should or does the government play in that? Right? If you're a person and you live in a left-wing area and the kid since they were 3 has wanted to transition and the parents have been all in on it, and I know there's this Munchausen thing going on too, but is there maybe a niche scenario where like they've gone through all of these hoops and everything and the kid gets the gender affirming care? I guess, because from my position it's like there's like what's best for society and there's what people want to do. And if you always take the side of we always have to do what's best for society, then people aren't allowed to do anything, and people don't like that. So you kind of have to find where the line is, and often where it happens is you say, this is what's best for society, and then you watch as people push back against it, and you kind of, then the line gets blurred, and you kind of find a balance somewhere, right? Like that's what I think is happening with marijuana, is that he said, it's better that people don't smoke marijuana, but a lot of people do anyways, and they want it. And so now we're saying, okay, I guess we're going to have to allow it, right? It would be better for the country to not allow it, but because so many people want it now, it's gotten to the point where it's more trouble to try and, this is what society wants, because a lot of people try and break the rule, whatever, right? So if I was going to say, like, what kind of government policy should we have around it and so forth like that, I'm not going to say that, like, gender affirming treatment should be banned, but I do think that there should be a lot of really tough hoops that you got to jump through, and that is certainly not the case right now. Is that fair? A single supportive teacher can ruin a job. It possibly is. And those kids at that time are really susceptible to it. They are. So a 9-year-old, someone that we wouldn't trust to run a bank, to drive a car to the football game a couple cities away, can't trust them to run a house. Here's drugs, kids. Well, the thing that I think is, what I think is funny about this particular issue is that by and large, the American populace by like a 60% margin agrees with this, both on like the gender affirming care and on the like transgender women in sports, right? So it's really quite a niche group of far left people that believe that this is a thing. And then they turn around and they try and act like everybody that doesn't agree with them is a monster. It's kind of funny because nobody agrees with them, and basically everybody else thinks that you're absolutely nuts, right? But that's always the leftist kind of tactic. The leftist tactic is always to try and portray that this is the virtuous thing, and this is what everybody else believes, and they try and use peer pressure to shame you into agreeing with them. Yeah, well, somebody started asking questions because they picked up on that I was a right-wing person, so we started talking politics. But Max asked a question. So you're the guy with the TTM strategy, aren't you? Yeah. So when I talked to him last time, it was like I was trying to figure out which version of these indicators he was using, because there's like lots of different versions. So like if I come into NinjaTrader, there actually is a version of it, but it's called something different. It's called Wise Man. There's the there's the Wise Man one. That was one of them. There was a different one. The TTM one, yeah, PMA and TTM. You were the TTO and TTM guy, right? Anyways, so I was asking, like, which version were you using? Because there's, like, subtle little differences. Like, for instance, it's supposed to be a smooth moving average. So, like, how do you do that? People have different opinions on what that is. A lot of people just say it's just an EMA. So I was trying to figure out, like, the very specifics of it. And he was saying that, like, oh, well, there's a part of this indicator that, like, my dad wrote. And when you told me that, to be honest with you, I just kind of gave up. I was like, okay, so first of all, I'm not going to be able to completely duplicate it. And number two, he's probably a kid. So, I wrote most of it. I'm not forgiving the children hormones just for their... Oh, okay. So were you just playing devil's advocate? I don't know. That's funny. It's funny how animated people will get. Like, anytime that this gets brought up, chat just goes crazy, right? You're 28 and your dad is 65? Okay. 28 is still a kid, but that's okay. But I suspected maybe you were a teenager, and I'm like, should I really even be like... Because here's the thing, Max. Here's how this goes. And here's why I was giving you the shit that I was. And I'm not... I tried to be super nice to you because I could tell that you were like generally nice. And this guy, he has a YouTube channel, I think it was, right? Yeah, if you gave me the code, that would help. Because I was using code from somewhere else, and I was like, well, it looks like that this will work, but I don't know if it will be as accurate to what he's specifically doing. Anyways, what happens is somebody will give me a setup, and I'll come in and I'll backtest it, and I'll show them the results, and they never believe it. I'll always be like, well, you forgot this, or you must have forgotten this or that. And so you just keep adding filters to it. And eventually it will get to the point where it doesn't make sense anymore, because like you've added so many filters to it that it like never takes trades. And so it's not really a very profitable strategy because it doesn't trade enough. And you don't have enough data samples to say that the results are decent or not, right? So I do this like every month. I run into somebody where it's like this, and I'm like, okay, well, guess what? I can just backtest most of the time. So in fairness to you, most of the time their setup is stupid. Most of the time it's like this moving average and this moving average and these price action setups, and those are actually relatively easy for me to program. You are a niche case where you're using an indicator that is not super common. Now, the indicator itself is not that complicated because it's essentially a bunch of moving averages. Like basically you take a moving average and then you like move them forward so many bars to account for the fact that they lag. So just based on what you're using, I'm pretty darn confident based on my backtesting experience in the past, that it's not going to work. And it's kind of like, how much time do I want to spend on it? If you're going to come here, then I can spend more time on it and we can write it. I wish you had come earlier. You should come back tomorrow at like, you know, we start at 8:30 Eastern time. If you come back tomorrow, or maybe probably Friday would be even better, and we can program it, right? Because I did program part of it on the stream here. But I'm going to bet that probably what's going on is you have a strategy that is biased towards going long and takes on a lot of risk, and so it does well because the S&P 500 has a tendency to move up, and you can make money from taking on risk. But usually the way that works out is that when the bad times come, you just get demolished, and it's not actually a profitable strategy. That's usually the way that it goes. And so there's not actually anything to the strategy or the setup. It's actually you're taking on risk. You know, like how many ticks against you can it go before you stopped out compared to how many ticks you're going for? Because a lot of people in the micros, in the E-mini, what they do is they say, okay, I will have a 16-point stop, and I'll take a profit if it goes 4 points in my favor, right? That's what I mean by taking on risk. I found the squeeze code from Thinkorswim, so the squeeze code on Thinkorswim is out there, so I could adapt that. Let's see here. So the guys have been commenting more than I'm Usually I'm able to address every comment. So if you had a question or something that I could address in the last 15 minutes and you don't feel like it was covered, please don't hesitate to like post it again. I saw Obsidian Futures saying, been thinking about trying out trading technologies for my execution platform. If you can afford trading technologies, you should absolutely use that. Like if we get to the point where we start a managed futures fund, there's a pretty high chance that I switch over to using trading technologies at some point. But it is very expensive. Okay. Just so that you know, it's like $200 a month or something like that, depending on which version you get. Finally, you stopped talking about politics. I know, right? I think we went a little bit too far on that, but he was asking the questions. He was asking a bunch of other questions that I thought I could cover, but you know, this is the other thing that's weird about this is that, like, okay, so I'm pretty politically engaged, but there are definitely like social issues that I don't care about. Like, you can't know everything about everything, right? Even in politics, being an expert on every bill and this and that, right? And I've tried to focus my expertise much more around economic sort of stuff, right? The only reason why I can give as much of an opinion about the transgender stuff is because I've had experiences with it with my own kids. Not that any of my kids thought that they were transgender or expressed that, but like with my oldest in particular, that was like all of his friends. It was pretty wild stuff. They were all pandemic, and so they all claimed that they were gay or transgender or something of that nature, right? Even though like the relationships that they were having were traditional gendered relationships. So it was weird. It was like, you know, it was girls with a guy, except for that the girls thought that they were a guy and their relationship was actually gay. Anyways, that's how I know about it, right? And so I had to go through and do what I do, like read studies. So then people are like, well, there's all these studies that say that if you get a gender transition that you're less likely to suicide yourself. So I went and I found the studies and read them, and they're bullshit. They're questionable samples that do not make the conclusions that the people say that they do. And to be basing our care on those is complete medical malpractice. And I'm not the first person to say that, but I went and I verified it myself. I've read these studies. They do not justify that. Okay. That's how I know about it. That's how I know about it, is because I went and I read the empirical evidence, right? So I feel like I'm at least a little bit, I try to be consistent. Obviously nobody's perfect, right? But I believe that we shouldn't follow empirical evidence. I don't think that we should follow the experts or follow the science. I think we should follow empirical evidence. That's what I believe in, and that's what I base my trading on. I'm not going to take a trade on something unless I have some empirical evidence that suggests that it's actually a thing. Now, that's hard because people don't understand the data science and they don't understand how much data you need to prove something and some of the biases that can come into the back testing. Okay, but I understand those things. I can do them. Probably tomorrow or the day after we can try to back test this TTM thing. But I'm just trying. The thing I'm trying to get you to understand, Max, is that you can make money from just taking on risk, right? Like your stop target kind of setup it has a lot more to do with the results that you get. If you are using set stops and targets, then the results that you get have more to do with what your set stop and target are than what your signal is. It's that extreme of an impact. And when you're doing a high win rate strategy, or what I call low R strategies, basically, the amount of money that you make when you win is less than the amount of money you lose when you lose. Those strategies, what you do is you get more wins, and so most of the time you appear profitable, but when you lose, the losers are bigger, so you have a longer left tail. And so over a large enough data set, those strategies are not profitable. but they appear profitable to the retail trader that doesn't have the ability to look at that data. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's almost certainly what's happening to you. If you were trading something that I know works, okay, like if you were like swing trading with a momentum strategy, then I would be interested and I'd be like, oh, okay, this is a strategy that we know that works, and how are you implementing it, and yada, 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 right? But if it's day trading and you're using indicators, probably it doesn't work. That's the other thing, is it's the day trading time frame is like a real killer. So what is TTM? Okay, so I guess there is one other thing about this. This is called a squeeze setup. So basically what they do is they've got a bunch of like moving averages, okay? And when the volatility gets low, you see the moving averages all kind of converge and cross. And then when a breakout occurs, because we were so tight, you tend to see an explosion in volatility. And I did a back test once with a setup that was similar to that showed some efficacy. I wouldn't say that it was like a strategy that I would trade, but it was better than most day trading technical indicator strategies. So he's using this squeeze indicator combined with, so one is TTM and one is TMO. To kind of tell you what the trend is to look for these squeeze situations. Right. Yeah, I'm scalping 1 minute and trading breakouts. Like, I'm going to bet you, the other thing that I'm going to do is, like, I'll show it to you on Treasuries. I guarantee you it's not going to work on the Treasuries. And then you'll say, oh, well, it's just, it only works on stocks or whatever the thing is, right? You'll say that. But Treasuries are extremely efficient instruments. So if it's really something, it's like a real thing, you know, like if you can get it to work on the Treasuries, then you know it's a real thing. Then you know it's a real thing. If it's on the S&P 500, there's a lot of noise involved in that. I have to use a really big sample before I believe something that's coming from ES. But that's because a lot of the things that would be like technical indicators like momentum, for those to work, you really have to catch big winners. To catch winners that are big enough, you have to be holding it for like months, usually. So the day time frame is kind of a killer, for the most part. That's why my current belief is, and this is just because we've never found anything that says otherwise, I think that to compete on a day time frame, that you have to be informed. That you have to know things about the market that other people don't, and be able to predict which way it's going to go based off of those. Because there's just it's not able to go far enough in a day time frame for you to really make the money from the technical side of things. Now, that might be different on individual stocks, I don't know. But like if we're going to do this on futures, ZN or ES, very unlikely to work. And so that's just like the assumption that I make, right? Or, I mean, that's not my assumption. I shouldn't call it an assumption. That's just, I can guess, based on what you've told me, that probably the results that you're seeing are a result of risk-taking and not the actual setup. If you're not an informed trader, then just hedge. There you go. I mean, you can market make, but I don't know if we're competitive on the market making sort of side of things. I trade pullbacks, so that sounds like another. The disparaging term that I use for these strategies is noise strategies. Basically, you're trying to make money from the noise of the market, and that will appear like, so what you have to do is you have to take on risk. You have to say, well, it's moving this much. This is what you do, is you say, here's what the ATR of things are. So if I come in here at the bottom and I go long and I try and catch something that is less than the length of this range, and then I have my stop is way more than this range, right? Then the chances of me getting stopped out are really quite low, right? Because in order for me to get stopped out, they have to break out of that range immediately and go right to my stop. That's not going to happen most of the time because, especially if I'm doing it fairly, you'd actually want to do it like early on, like second or third time that it comes to the bottom of that range, right? Do it fairly early on and just make it off of that range, right? So yes, most of the time you'll make money from that. And there's all different kinds of setups and ways of doing that. But what you're really doing is you have a really short target and you're doing it within range bound market, right? And the issue is always that you run into a market where all of a sudden it starts changing, and then it does do that. And it will do that like 10 times in a row, and then you blow out the account. That's the way that most noise strategies work. And so I would just ask yourself this, like if you like Indie Scalper, for instance, if you feel like you're having success with that method, do I have a set stop and target? Because if you have a set stop and target, the results that you're getting are probably largely a factor of your stop and target. And if your target is closer than your stop, then that explains why it works the way that you do. Yep. I can come over here. I can trade ES to make $100. I only need it to go 4 ticks, and I can have this huge stop. You're going to get that most of the time, yes. But when it stops working, it really stops working. And you'll blow the account before you even realize what's going on. That's what usually happens. Never met, so 5 years, never met somebody doing that and they've made it 5 years. I think I've met one person that claimed 3, but I've never heard 5. Well, thank you for subbing. We will, I'm kind of lazy. That's kind of part of the thing is I'm kind of lazy. It's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to get any benefit from this. So I kind of lost the motivation to do it. But if you're going to come around, that's motivation, man. So I'll do it. Yeah, if any of you can have 5 years of profitable day trading, I'd love to see it. The profitable day trading on futures, because not that I've ever seen it, but I still believe that profitable day trading with stocks for over a 5-year period is probably possible. Probably possible. Because there's just so many more things you can do with stocks because there's so many of them, right? So it might be a different game. Okay, so Monique, you're doing something slightly different, right? You have a runner. So wait, you say 1.5 to 1.75. So does that mean that, like, if I take a long here and I have a 4-tick stop, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have a 4-tick stop, and then my profit is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is my target, and then I let the other one run? Because then you have an R factor that's actually quite high. Like with that one, I would expect, well, your win rate probably be more like 30%, in the 30 to 40s. And who knows about what happens with that runner. But that would be great if you get that to work. So what a lot of people do is they'll do the opposite. This is like, okay, I'll take 2 contracts. The first contract I'll take off at 2. And then I'll let the second contract go to 6, and then the last contract go. And then over here on this side, I'll have my stop be at 4. So I do have one target that's slightly closer. But it kind of all washes out. So you get that one, but then it might get that one and then come back down here and stop out, and then you break even. Every profit would be 6 to 7 ticks for every 1 point line. That's a really, really high R factor. Well, from 2022, starting from 2022 is not bad. So most people, that's the other thing that's really funny, is most people started trading in 2020. Most of the people that I know or that I remember from before 2020 aren't around. Except for the guys that are here. Like, there's a group that is here on the stream every day in chat. And most of those were from before 2020. But they're like the only ones that I know. This is like the market completely changed in 2020 and a completely different group of people came in. It's really weird. Okay, guys. It is top of the hour, so it's time for me to get going. So I will see you guys tomorrow in the meantime. And it is PCE, so it's a big number tomorrow, right? In the meantime, stay